Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. It's a real honor and a privilege.
It's nice to be here speaking with you.
So you have many years experience in IP in both the United States, Canada. How is the current COVID-19 situation impacting the IP sector in general, and which are the major changes you've seen in the last few months?
Well, I think certainly in the IP sector where I work, which is in the life sciences, it's been busier than it otherwise would have been, and it was busy beforehand. But we've seen a real uptick in filings related to COVID from a diagnostic perspective, from therapeutic perspectives, for new uses of existing therapeutics that might have some level of efficacy against COVID. So the frequency of filings has drastically increased, and I have a background in immunology, so it's I've been sort of at the right place at the right time, despite pretty horrific circumstances, to try to move these sort of inventions forward for a lot of clients.
Your background of having a background in immunology, as well as being a partner in intellectual property and technology transaction lawyer for Snell and Wilmer. You serve as an external IP counsel to dozens of companies around the world. You also work across various technology industries, but mostly with biotech. Have
Yeah.
you seen this COVID-19 situation having a financial impact on IP stakeholders? And if you would say the impact is more noticeable in some jurisdictions, industries, rather than others?
I think there's been an impact for everybody. Fortunately, the vast majority of my clients are well-funded, and they're going to make it through this. And some of them, because they're in the life sciences space, will probably come out stronger than when they went in. But I think, I think everyone has, watched where their legal expenditures have gone, and they're managing that a little bit more tightly than they had prior to this. But certainly on companies that were operating in a space where their technology could be utilized for either diagnosing COVID infection or providing some type of therapeutic approach, at least their IP budgets have actually increased pretty significantly, given the importance of what they're doing.
Have you seen any of the companies that were working on something prior and have things coming into national phase cutting back in order to use those funds to work on more COVID-19 related technologies?
That's a gregreat question. No, I haven't seen a lot of cutbacks on that front. Most of my clients are pretty strategic about where they go at national phase entry, and I don't think they have really altered things too much. So I've been sort of thankful that way, and I think it's, we don't sort of overfile. We file in really key jurisdictions for the life sciences, notably the US and Europe, and then take a case-by-case example or case-by-case strategy based on the importance of the technology relative to other filings, et cetera. So we've, I think, managed this very well, as have our clients, and so there hasn't been these sort of knee-jerk responses to what we've been facing for the last 2 or 3 months.
So Jeff, your company, you're dealing with clients in the biotech industry. They're filing rapidly, with quickly in order to protect their rights and get in first. Do you see that some of them may be being a little bit too not cautious enough, and like sort of just trying to get in there first without having like the exact structure set up? If that makes sense.
You're certainly right that a number of the clients that I work with have been filing on a very rapid frequency. Historically, there's usually a fair bit of time between the time you invent something and generate the data to support that and the filing. That might be a few weeks, maybe a month. And here we've been operating sometimes on almost in a real-time cycle where data gets generated the night before, hits my desk at 7 at night. I work on it through the night, and we file the next day. Um, Given that the world's intellectual property system operates on a first to file basis, I think it's preferable in times like this to file quickly. And you always have an opportunity with follow-on provisional filings to update what you've done. I think, to the extent that there have been challenges for not only my clients, but anyone operating in this space, it's been that the data has been generated at a speed that it's difficult sometimes to know what the data means at this point. And slowly, people are starting to figure out what the data means, and they're able to adapt their pending patent applications to reflect that. And so I think that's been a significant challenge.
Will this maybe cause a backlog for the patent offices in order to make sure, if you have, I would assume hundreds, maybe thousands of very similar patents being filed at the same time around the world, is this going to make it difficult and maybe slow down the process and to figure out who owns what and who has the rights where?
Well, I think certainly, there's just going to be the huge influx of relevant patent art, not only in patent filings, but in things that are published in scientific journals, et cetera. So I think, suddenly, if you were doing patent filings in November 2019 related to coronavirus, there'd be a lot less art that you would have to overcome versus where we're sitting now in May 2020, and just the influx or the massive expansion of relevant art is pretty significant. I don't necessarily think it's going to cause a backlog, but it will make prosecution more difficult going forward, just because there's just a lot more things for patent examiners to be considering.
Will this also, in a year from now or 18 months, once things go public, will this cause a lot more disputes between the biotech companies based on, a lot more IP litigation moving forward?
It certainly could. Yeah, I mean, right now we're so early in the process that no one's IP rights have crystallized into anything. But recently, the U.S. Patent Office announced that they're going to have sort of an expedited prosecution program for COVID-related inventions, and that could result in patents being granted within 6 to 12 months, which is literally years earlier than it might otherwise have taken. And so, yeah, that could certainly be an outcome of this, but I think we're many months away from seeing where that goes.
What about FDA approval? Is that something that's also being expedited?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's not an area that it's a very sort of specific area. It's not one that I focus my practice on, but yes, that the FDA has been providing much quicker approval for not only diagnostics but also therapeutics, and we've seen that with some of the therapeutic options that that Gilead has put out, for example.
So if you would say to the customers around the world, when would you say a vaccine would be potentially available to the public?
From the things I've been reading and from my knowledge of immunology, I think we're probably looking at 12 to 18 months from the start of of this crisis, which started in November, December 2019. So I think using that as the metric, yeah, I think people have to be hopeful that by November, December 2020 out through early summer 2021 that something's going to be happening. I mean, I think what is incredible about this whole process is you've got some of the very best minds in the world all focusing on one issue. And so it's not just going to be one company with one vaccine. There's going to be likely many different options, and hopefully some of them work, or some combination or cocktail of them work. So it's exciting, and hopefully it will come along much sooner than later. But I think it's everything suggests that 12 to 18 months is a reasonable time frame.
So Jeff, you're admitted to the bars and courts of Arizona, California, um, British Columbia. You're also admitted to the United States Patent and Trademark Office and the Canadian Intellectual Property Office.
Yeah.
Have you seen, you had mentioned there were some expedited claims, but from any of these bodies directly related to the current situation, have you seen any instructions different?
Well, certainly the state bar and the provincial law societies in Canada have put out a lot of information, mostly related to sort of changes in court-based proceedings. And I'm not a litigator. I don't go to court, so it's, I've noticed that, but I haven't paid a huge amount of attention to those directives. But my understanding is that in all the jurisdictions that I follow, that people are starting to be able to go to court in a different manner, much like we are doing here. And then from the patent office perspective, I think one of the most significant things that has happened, not only in the United States and Canada, but really around the world, is that the patent offices have allowed for late filings related to timelines that have taken place, say between the middle of March and through the end of May. So the USPTO is pushing things till June 1st, the Canadian Patent Office likewise. And so I think that has been a pretty extraordinary thing that all the patent offices that I tend to work in front of have been doing to help facilitate people to continue to move their patentable inventions forward, but understandably are caught up in the fact that their patent attorneys aren't at the office and people are running low on funds, et cetera. So there's been in the end, there'll be probably about a 2.5-month window where if you had a deadline falling within that window, you can seek relief and file late, and you won't compromise the integrity of your patent filings.
Is there anything else you would like to add that reflects how the sector has been impacted by the global reality that we're currently living in?
Well, I think first of all, we've survived, which is great, and I think that firms that were in a strong position going into it, which Snell and Wilmer absolutely was, will come out stronger than before. And I think, one of the most important things here that I have seen is the importance of strong management for law firms and organizations. And I think companies and law firms that have strong management and understanding management will pull through this and come out the other end stronger than before. And I'm very thankful to be at a firm that has extremely good management with people that care deeply about what everyone is going through and have made very difficult decisions, but the right decisions at the right time.
There are foreign associates around the world relying on the innovation in the biotech industry in order to, that's part of their bread and butter. If you
Mhm.
had 30 seconds or less, what would you tell those foreign associates around the world that may be watching? What should they expect from the sector in general?
Well, I think for foreign attorneys that where their bread and butter is the national phase filing process, I would start to calendar things 30 months from the start of this crisis, and I think there will be a massive influx of filings 2.5 years from now. And hopefully other patent offices around the world will follow what the United States has done, which is to provide for incentives to expedite this process. I think the United States, has really led on this issue at the USPTO, and I think other countries need to do the same thing, whether it be, for example, allowing for an expedited prosecution for no additional fees to be paid. And I hope that other jurisdictions start to, follow suit, because I think that will really help facilitate further development of these important therapeutics and also really important diagnostics. And I think, the only other point I would make is that one thing that I think will come out of this crisis from a patent perspective is, it just historically has been so challenging for innovators to get meaningful patent protection on diagnostics. And I think the importance of diagnostics cannot be underscored with this emergency. I mean, part of the reason the United States is in the position that we're in right now is because the diagnostic side of it didn't work very well at the beginning. And not that there's necessarily a causative relationship between the patent protection issues that have been faced and how COVID response got started, but I think incentivizing innovative companies to focus on diagnostics and meaningful diagnostics would be a really welcome outcome from this crisis.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I hope I hope everyone stays safe. This crisis ends
Thank
soon,
you.
and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.